Hey everyone, my name is Go, and I am with Emily Wall, Professor Emily Wall at UAS, and Eric Bergen. And they are working, or they worked on Tidal Echoes this year, and we're going to talk to them, find out the full scoop about Tidal Echoes, how it gets produced, how it gets put out, and then also how y'all can get involved in the future, because this is something that happens every year, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I got my copy. I think I'll start by asking you guys to do a quick introduction of yourself and how you're involved with Tidal Echo. So Emily?
Good. Yeah, I'm Emily Wall, and I'm a professor of English and creative writing at UAS, where I've worked for the past 24 years. And I teach creative writing, composition, literature, and I oversee the Tidal Echoes Literary Journal and help shepherd it through its process.
And how many years have you been working on that?
So I've been doing it for the past 14 years now, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just counting that up and thinking, oh my gosh, 14 years, here it is. My first kid was born 14 years ago, and I started the journal the same year. So I feel like that baby and this baby are growing up together.
That's awesome. And Erica, how about you?
My name is Erica Bergen. I'm a English major, senior this year, with an emphasis in creative writing. And I, for the past year, have been the senior editor of Tidal Echoes, and the year before that, I was the junior editor. So I've been working on this project for 2 years now, and yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I have some questions for you, and I'm sure you guys will switch off. So first of all, for anyone who's not savvy to Tidal Echoes, or maybe they've heard it in passing, they just don't know exactly what it is. What's a brief history of Tidal Echoes?
Okay, so Tidal Echoes is the regional literary and art journal. And as you can see, it's kind of a sort of glossy publication, and it's full of writing and art from people who live in Southeast Alaska. So it started in 2002 as a student-only journal, actually. And it ran for about 5 years, 4 years that way. And then about 14 years ago, I came on as faculty advisor, and we decided to expand its borders. And so now we accept work submissions from anybody living full-time in Southeast Alaska. So we like to publish students at UAS, but we accept work from everybody. And I think maybe one of the most important features is that it's a student-run journal. So I'm the faculty advisor, but the editors of the journal are all UAS students. We have 3 students who work on it every year, and they do all of the work, all of the editing. It's an incredible amount of work. We counted it up this year, maybe 450 hours of student work to put the journal together.
It's a labor of love. What kind of submissions does the publication take? Right now, we're kind of scrolling through a few of the photos, and they're a little cropped, so they're more teaser photos of some of the things that have been in, or that are in this year's book. But what type of submissions does the publication take? And have you ever been surprised by the submissions that you've gotten? Have you ever had to do a double take and go, can we do this? Or yeah, let's figure this out. How do we do this?
Yeah, so we, for literature, we publish fiction and poetry. We generally don't publish nonfiction, and most kinds of like visual art are also accepted. So our artist this year was actually a textile artist, Lily Hope. So I was delighted and surprised that that she was even an option, because I don't think of like textiles as something that you can have in a literary arts journal, but obviously that's what we did. As far as the literature goes, we had a few submissions this year that were more nonfiction based, and we kind of had to take a hard look at, like, is this more of an academic paper or is it more memoir based? And like memoir writing is something that we do take, but academic papers we don't. So it was kind of treading that line was sometimes a little difficult, because that can get blurred at times. Mhm.
I know you guys publish in-house and you guys are worked on by a small crew of people. Three students, you said. Um, what's that process like? Also, I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of people have had COVID fatigue. Everything is a little bit different this year, and it's exhausting to relearn some things that were a lot easier to do. Like, I don't know if you were able to meet in person, like have meetings in person, or if it was all Zoom. What were some of the joys of working on this publication, and what were some of the things that were a little harder?
Yeah, it went surprisingly well. I was a little anxious about it, because of COVID. So our usual process is that students start applying to be editors in the journal in the spring. And so I had 3 editors lined up, Anastasia Erickson, Erica, who's here, and Emily Bowman. And all 3 students were amazingly, totally up for it. I was so happy in September touching base with them, and they're like, yep, we're up, let's do it, we're going to figure it out. And I keep thinking kind of the theme of this year's journal is resiliency, and that really was evident in my 3 students. And so Erica suggested we just all meet every week on Zoom, which we did. Anastasia in the fall did an incredible job using social media, all kinds of ways to get the word out. We usually do go into classes and do posters all over town, and she figured out how to do it virtually. And then Emily and Erica come on in January, and we had a full board of staff and faculty who read the journal, and we did it all digitally this year. No paper copies in people's offices. We just figured out the digital version of it. And the board met over Zoom, of course, and had our usual annual discussion where we passionately argue for the pieces we love and have our big debate about what goes in. And then our graphic designer, Allison, takes over usually about March, and she designed the journal. Litho has been our printer, and they're wonderful. They did everything digitally. The galley proofs we used to all do in paper with big red pens spread all over my office, and we did it all digitally. They actually drove to my house like 3 different times with copies and boxes of books. And I just feel like everybody kind of said, you know what, this is important, that we can make this happen. We're all masked, we're all digital, but this journal is going to come out no matter what. So it was very cool to see.
Through the journal, even it sounds like that was part of the process too. And you touched a little bit on it, but is there anything that makes this year's Tidal Echoes stand out to you in comparison to prior years, or are there references to the current pandemic in the journal? I know that's something I'm looking forward to diving into. And then we talked about this a little bit off camera, but is there anything that you guys think that you might carry over, like something that happened because of the pandemic, putting it together, all these things that you kind of outlined, that you think that you might do again next year when we're hopefully out of this mess?
As for your first question, I definitely think that the pandemic has deeply influenced this year's edition of Tidal Echoes. In fact, we were thinking that when we were selecting a cover image, that image of the mask, we were like, it has to, people are, this journal is going to stand out in history, as the COVID journal. This is going to be it'll be like Tidal Echoes, mask, and it tells you exactly what's in it. Some of my favorite poems and short stories were people reflecting on how their lives have changed in this time, and what it means to take time for solitude, and also interact with our communities in ways that we haven't before. So those were some of my favorite pieces, and I think that we bookended the journal pretty well with pieces that reflect that as well. As far as moving forward, that might be a question for Emily, because I am going to be moving on. I'm not going to be working on the journal next year. I'm wondering if there's anything that you might want to continue that we started on this process with.
Well, I mean, I would think the number one thing is our launch. We're already debating that a little bit. So in previous years, we've held the launch at UAS and about 100 people come out. We sell 150 copies. We cram snacks in. We have a really good time. But this year, of course, we did it over Zoom, and we had this amazing team of UAS staff who did really a remarkable job. Our social media coordinator, Katie, our IT person, Cody, lots of people kind of stepped up and created a virtual event. And a lot of people asked us to continue in the future. And we had, I think, 270 people come this year. So we're already debating that because we love that in-person party, but we also love the fact that everyone's relative in Ohio could come to this launch, you know. So I think that's one thing for sure we'll be thinking about, you know, how do we do that next year?
That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of organizations too are thinking about like how are we going to meld these two worlds together, because there's good things from both. Erica, you talked a little bit about the cover and how this year's cover is kind of a standout cover. In general, how do you folks usually come up with a good cover selection? What stands out to you as a good cover image? And then what made you pick, you know, what made this cover the cover for you this year?
As far as, yeah, I think I talked about how I wanted this cover to be reflective of our time. And that was a consideration that I don't think we've had in years previously as far as the cover goes. Pat Race last year made a cover specifically with like in mind that this was going to be the cover, whereas Lily Hope gave us a selection of different photographs. Yeah, that's Pat Race's cover, which I think is also beautiful. And yeah, Lily Hope gave us a selection of different photographs to choose from. So the process was a little bit different this year. And I think there was a consensus among Emily Bowman and I that it should be a mask to kind of signify the mask has really become a symbol of care for each other in this time. Like it's really become a thing, a show of respect and a show of I guess communal working towards getting through this pandemic together.
Yeah. The other thing I'll add is I actually absolutely love the back of the journal. This photo, I actually almost brought me to tears when I saw it. As a writer and an artist and a mom of 3, I feel like this photo was very powerful, right? Showing so many of us with kids are trying so hard to keep our professional lives together and nurture our children at the same time. And do both brilliantly. And it's been a challenge. I think all of you out there who have kids can recognize this. And I love the way that this photo embraces Lily as a powerful mother, as a powerful artist, doing both at once, doing both with grace. She's been a real role model for me. So I think this is my favorite back cover, I think, of all of the journals.
Yeah, it's beautifully put together. One thing I like to ask anyone that comes on this after hours at the lobby shop is how to, if you're here, it means that you are at least breaking out into putting your art into the world. And whether that be writing or 2D or 3D art, it's very difficult for a lot of people to put their art into the world. It's a scary thing. And I know that Tidal Echoes is such a great opportunity for someone who maybe loves to write or maybe has art that could be published, that they could get it into the community and be then published. But it's also I think it's scary for people. I know that the first time I started submitting artwork, I still get sweaty hands when I see my artwork in public. So what would you tell people who are struggling with putting their art into the world, and what advice would you give them who want to be published, but they may need a little bit of encouragement to get there?
Did you want to take this, Emily? I kind of started on the last one. We had an order and then switched out of it.
I would just say that as readers on the other end of it, we are so grateful. I think the act of submitting is an incredible act of bravery. Just to put your work out, as you said, Laura, you know, it's really, really hard to do. One thing that helps me, my friend Hank Lentfer, always reminds me that art and stories exist. They have their own lives, and our work is to shepherd them, to hold them and bring them out. And so it helps me to sort of remove my ego from the process and think, I was given this story, and my work is to bring it forward, to help it find its place in the world. And I like thinking of myself as a caretaker, you know, and thinking it will find its home, right? So I think if people can really believe in the actual work that they're doing, this is important work. Everybody has such important stories to share, such important work to share. And I think you have to have the belief in what you're doing and think, all I need to do is find a home for it, and there will be a home. I just need to look for it and take it there.
Yeah, and it seems like such a great opportunity for people who maybe don't have a lot of experience finding that home to find a home for. All right, how about what have you both learned as artists by working on a publication like this? Because you're going from being the creator to kind of being backstage. And I know that I used to do wearable arts a whole bunch, and being an artist in wearable arts, and now being on the Jack and seeing the productions end of things, I've learned so much more. So I'm sure that as writers and creators yourself, that you've learned a bunch being on the back end of a publication like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, man, I have so much more respect now for everything that it takes to like publish and to put together a literary art journal or any kind of like amalgamation of different works, and get it out into the world than I did before. It's really like, I think that what I've learned the most is that these things are team efforts for sure. Like these are hours of dedication and heart and hard work from a wide variety of people, and you can't overlook anyone in the process. You can't, like, not the artists themselves, not the graphic designers, not the editors, not the social media team. It's all like it all depends on everyone, and everyone's very interconnected in that way. So I think what I've learned most is that like you really have to be a good team player and trust your team, and really like have a lot of gratitude for each step in that process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Out because I know that you're not only working on this baby, but inside of it is so many people's different babies. You know what I mean? So you're working with all these artists. They all have probably a little anxiety about being published. They all have a very strong emotions attached to what is being published. What is it like working with so many artists to create this yearly collaborative work? And how do you make sure everyone is happy with the outcome? Because I know art's ambiguous, everyone sees it a little differently, but it seems like you've really been able to walk the line and be able to honor everybody so well.
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, very early on, 14 years ago, when we started envisioning what this journal was, we thought a lot about how to do a call for submissions. And one thing that was really important to us is not to direct people what we wanted. We didn't want to have themes. We didn't want to have very specific guidelines. We really wanted the journal to reflect what Southeast Alaskans are really thinking and feeling, whatever that is. and to really, like you said, kind of honor who we are as a people living in this place. And I hope that the journal does that. I mean, every year I'm amazed. Eric and I joked about this too. Somehow the pieces are in conversation. It's kind of this magical thing that happens. Every year we can kind of pull out a thread of like, wow, this is what this is about. You know, and this year certainly was about the pandemic. And part of that is really thanks to our really brilliant graphic designer, Allison, who takes the raw material and she decides this photo is in conversation with this poem. So she does the art. And then the editors, Erica and Emily, in arranging the work, I think really think about that. Like, should we have a poem that's really dark and despairing next to one that offers some hope? What is that conversation going to be like? So it's very interesting to think about the process of putting a book together, taking all of this really intense, beautiful raw material and thinking, what should the opening piece be? That's going to start the conversation. What should our closing piece be? And thinking about people's experience as they walk through this book.
Theater show, you know, like going in and there's these arcs and there's these conversations with each other, and it really is beautiful how it all works together. Got one more question for y'all. You don't do this just for fun, I know. It's because it's very important to our community and it's important to the people that live here. And I think debatably this is one of the most important years that this journal has come out. So what is your argument or what is your reasoning why small community-based literary journals are so important?
Yeah, I think that, gosh, it's true. I feel like these small literary arts journals are so important to the community. And I think it's because, especially for a community like Southeast Alaska, where we are, a lot of our communities are kind of isolated and self-sufficient, or not self-sufficient, but like very insulated, and has a very deep like connection to community. I think that that's harder to get on a national level. There are like, of course, like big journals that publish from all over the place. But I don't think that we would be able to have the same journal that's able to have those internal dialogues that we were just talking about if it were a larger scale. I think that have like these pieces that are in conversation because they're coming from the same place and because they're coming from people who have some basic understanding of what it means to live here and what it means to experience all the beauty that we get to experience every day living here. So yeah, and I think that sometimes those voices can get overlooked on a national scale, and it's important to have local voices be acknowledged and be listened to, and yeah, to have a platform for those, because sometimes they just don't have as much of a platform.
I agree. And it's also like kind of the identity of our place. And I think that, you know, I can read it and relate to so many of the things because, you know, these people are my neighbors. But I can also send it to my, you know, family who live somewhere completely different, and they can maybe get a taste of why I love it so much here. They can get the culture a little bit more. So thank you guys so much. This has been awesome. Right now, we always have these at the Jack, and right now we're not in the Jack currently, but we do have a lobby shop. We just have a little pop-up right here, and you can click on that, and we will, for the next 3 days, be the cheapest place in town to get your Tidal Echoes. And we also do free delivery and in town, and then we ship out of town too. So I will say we've had some orders already. You guys, I feel like they're selling really well this year. It's everyone's looking forward to hearing all these voices. And just thanks again. I can't wait for next year, and maybe next year we'll be in person a little bit more. That'd be great. But again, thank you so much, Professor Emily Wall and Erica Bergen. It's been delightful talking to you both.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This has been lovely.
Yeah,
And it will,
thank you.
yeah, this will also be up on First Friday. Nancy just popped in and she reminded me of this. So we will be replaying this interview on First Friday.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Enjoy the weather.